Check, check, check. Check, check, check. We're very close, within 4 to 5 seconds. What's that? It's broken? This will be a fast meeting. Yeah, I think we, Lisa is remote, so is she on? We can get started without her. Good evening and welcome to the March 19, 2024 City Council regular hybrid meeting. I'm Mayor Salim Neese. This evening's hybrid City Council meeting is being brought to you in person and by Zoom. We're also broadcasting on the city's YouTube channel. We welcome anyone wishing to watch the meeting live to join us in the city's YouTube channel via Zoom or here at the Mercer Island Community Event Center. Before this meeting, the City Council was in executive session from 5 p.m. to 6 p.m. During executive session, we discussed with legal counsel pending or potential litigation pursuant to RCW 42.30.110, paren 1, close paren, little I, close paren. Welcome to all. Thanks for joining us tonight. Council, please have your microphones turned on for roll call. Acting City Clerk, Ali Speets, please call the roll.
Councilmember Androl. Councilmember Jacobson.
Here.
Councilmember Reynolds.
Here.
Councilmember Weicker. Here. Councilmember Weinberg.
Here.
Deputy Mayor Rosenbaum.
Here.
Mayor Neese.
Here. All right, next we have the Pledge of Allegiance. Council, if you've joined, well, everybody's in chamber, so we're just going to face the flag and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. We now move to approval of tonight's agenda. If there's no questions, may I have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Councilmember, just one moment. Councilmember Jacobson?
Yeah, I'm so moved.
Oh, okay. It was moved by Councilmember Jacobson, seconded by Councilmember Weicker. City Clerk, please call the roll.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councilmember Jacobson.
Aye.
Councilmember Androl.
Aye.
Deputy Mayor Rosenbaum.
Aye.
Mayor Neese.
Aye.
Councilmember Reynolds.
Aye.
Councilmember Weicker.
Aye.
Councilmember Weinberg.
Aye.
All right, motion passes. The agenda is approved as presented. Next on the agenda, we have the City Manager's Report, for which we welcome City Manager Jesse Bond.
Good evening. Is my microphone working? It is. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. Are we sure it's working? Yes. Okay, thank you, Casey, for the slide share. Next slide, please. Council, here's a look ahead at your upcoming meeting schedule. Your next meeting is Tuesday, April 2nd. We have a very busy board and commission meeting schedule. Hold on a second. There we go. A very busy board and commission meeting schedule coming up. Planning Commission and Parks and Recreation Commission are meeting this week. I should call out, I just realized it's in the wrong spot, but the City Council is having a joint meeting with the school district on Thursday. One conflict, some of us are going to be at the Parks Commission and Open Space joint meeting, and some of you are going to be at the school district meeting. Thank you for helping us cover both meetings. And then the Planning Commission is reconvening on March 27th and continuing their work on the comprehensive plan update. Next slide, please. City updates. I mostly have a handful of project updates for you. Let me start with an update on the police modular buildings. Those are the two buildings you see in the picture there on your screen. We took delivery of these buildings a couple of weeks ago. Our maintenance crews have been out. They worked over the weekend. They are working on connecting our water and sewer utilities. We started with the water line connections. Those should be installed in the next few days. Sewer will follow. That work should wrap up by next week. Also on deck, we have a contractor who's doing all of the electrical and data connection work. That's going to take, I'm going to say, I said a few weeks here on the slide, but it's probably 3 to 4 weeks, and then these buildings will be operational. We have a third building we'll be taking delivery of later this spring. So I wanted to let you know that we're doing all the prep work to take delivery of that third building now, so that the utility runs will be in place and the data and electrical runs will also be in place. Also, as you walk out of the room tonight, you may, we're at the community center for those of you watching online. There is a new unit sitting right outside of this room, the Slater room. That is where all of our emergency management supplies are. We just moved all of those supplies out of the City Hall property here. We need them in the event we're responding to an emergency. The community center is not only our shelter, but it's also our emergency operations center now. So that's why that big storage container is here. We did some planting to try to screen it, but it is a necessary part of our operations. So that is what is going on there. Next slide, please. The Luther Burbank Boiler Building, I just wanted to mention, if you haven't been down to Luther Burbank lately, phase 1 of what is a really significant project is underway. This is primarily seismic retrofit of the boiler building. So we'll be working on, we're doing some demolition work on the concrete floor slab and removing the brick from inside the chimney. And then that will set the stage for the steel reinforcement that will be added to the building, and that work will begin in April. We're anticipating completing this project this year, and then the second phase of our project, which is the waterfront and dock project, will be in 2025. Next slide, please. Last year, we adopted your town center parking plan. And I wanted to just call out one work item that we've accomplished just recently, as you may not be on our website looking for it. But you can see in the picture there's a link now called Getting Around. And what the staff has done is just published all of the information that you need to get around Mercer Island and Town Center, including maps of where the parking, free public parking is, and links to public transportation schedules and more. This is, I will call this in development. So if you have any thoughts or ideas of ways to improve that website, please do let us know. All right, next slide, please. Finally, the Island Crest Park North Infield Turf Replacement Project was complete. Unfortunately, a couple of weeks late, but we did get the turf field open so that the Mercer Island High School varsity baseball team could play their first home game there on March 11th. I will tell you, Council, we had a lot going on behind the scenes to get those final turf pieces glued down, including our maintenance crews out shoveling snow unexpectedly. We had a snow day. We were out with big fans drying the field so that we could set the turf and dry the glue. Many, many thank yous all the way around, not only our maintenance crews, but our project staff, the community members, the booster club, the high school. Everybody pitched in to help reschedule and work around the crews. There is certainly an opportunity for a little after-action analysis to think about what we might do differently, because we do replace turf on our fields about every 10 years. The challenge we have with every single one of our fields is they're played year-round. So we try to pick the downtime, and then sometimes we have some setbacks like Mother Nature, but we'll certainly be doing that work so that we can hit our deadlines in the future. All right, next slide, please. A few upcoming events. We look forward to this event every year. The spring recycling event is on March 30th from 9 o'clock to 3 o'clock. We normally do this on the north end of the island, but due to the City Hall closure, This event will be held at the Islander Middle School. This is our second year at that site. I want to mention that this is also sports season. I have kiddos playing softball, and so we will be amplifying the message about anyone visiting South Mercer playfields on this day that there's going to be an activity going on at Islander Middle School. So lots of comms will be running over the next several days ahead of the March 30th event. Next slide, please. Comprehensive plan update. This is just a flag for you that we have set the date for the open house on the comprehensive plan update. And council, if we have not added it to your calendars, I'll ask Casey to do that tonight. It will be May 1st from 6 o'clock to 8 o'clock. It's a great opportunity for the community members to come out, meet with our staff team, all of you if you're available, and talk about the periodic update. I anticipate the Planning Commission will be handing off their recommendation to you in July, and you will be doing your review work this fall. Anticipate lots of promotions coming and other ways for people that can't attend this event, other ways for them to connect with us and provide their feedback on the draft plan. Next slide, please. All right, some good news, and then we'll wrap up here. Last Friday, we invited city council members and utility board members to the reservoir, and we celebrated the switching on. It wasn't exactly a ribbon cutting, but a switching on of the booster chlorination system. For those of you that have been on the island for a while, I think that's all of you, this project took us 10 years, and it was the final action item from that not so fun 2014 boil water advisory. This is a great piece of infrastructure. It essentially allows us to control the chlorine levels. So when water is coming onto the island, it travels from quite a distance, and the residual chlorine levels sometimes are a little bit too low. This allows us to literally boost it up to acceptable levels. If you want any more detail than what I just provided, I'll have to get you connected with one of our water team members. But really a proud moment. Thank you for those of you that could make it. This is not an event that we invite the public in just because it's our reservoir and it's a secure area, but it was certainly fun to show it off to all of you. So thank you for your support. It's been a long time coming, and my hat's off to the project team for working through the project over these many years. And I think that is our last slide. Before I switch off my screen, I'll just mention, council, the HVAC system is down in this room, so I think we're going to prop the doors and try to get some cool air in here, and I do apologize. We'll get it fixed as soon as we can.
We will be bringing in fans. So.
All right. Moving on, our next item of business is appearances. This is an opportunity for anyone to speak to City Council on any item except items requiring a public hearing, any quasi-judicial matters or campaign-related matters. Tonight's agenda will include in-person public appearances and remote public appearances via Zoom. Individuals wishing to address the council may do so in person or by Zoom or telephone, provided they register with the city clerk by 4 p.m. today. When it's your turn to speak, you'll be called by name. Remarks must be addressed to the council as a whole and not to individual council or staff members. Any person making personal, impertinent, or slanderous remarks or who becomes boisterous, threatening, or personally abusive while addressing the city council may be requested to leave the meeting. Please speak audibly, state your name and city of residence for the record. There'll be a timer on the screen. You'll have 3 minutes to speak. When your time is ended, I'll thank you for your comments and move to the next speaker or item of business. City Clerk, please call the first speaker.
Mr. Mayor, the first speaker is Addie Smith.
Welcome.
Hello, my name is Addie Smith. Today is March 19, 2024. I am speaking before the Mercer Island City Council. I am a hate crime survivor. These city council members, all of them, their current mayor, Salim Neese, and former mayor, Benson Wong, were all included in emails that I sent in 2019, months before I was arrested after defending myself in a hate crime attack. The Mercer Island Chief of Police and the Mercer Island City and the Mercer Island Police Department report directly to the people in this room. The municipal court judge, Jeff Gregory, and city attorney, Bill Park, and prosecutor Blakely Warburton, and the public defenders for all defendants before the Mercer Island Municipal Court all report to these council members. Their salaries and contracts are approved by these city council members. Several days before I was arrested after defending myself from a convicted felon in one of the many hate crime attacks, the Mercer Island Police came to my home and delivered a temporary order of protection from my corporate landlord, former employers. My corporate landlord, former employers, told a judge that my emails to them begging for help to stop the hate crime attacks were harassing them. They even terminated me for complaining to them in emails and verbally about the attacks. When the Mercer Island Police arrived with this temporary order of protection, I once again asked them to write police reports to stop the attacks on mine and my daughter's lives. I recorded the 3 police officers at my home that day. They were the same police officers that came after I called the police on November 26, 2019, after I was attacked again by a convicted felon. This felon was one of several white people recruited by a white woman who was angry with me for refusing to violate state and federal housing laws, to threaten, harass, attack, and stalk my daughter and I. These 3 police officers, who number 1 were all at my home days prior to the attack, and number 2 who I had met at Mercer Island Police Department for months prior, asking to file police reports, decided to arrest me on November 26, 2019, instead of the convicted felon they had known for months was harassing, stalking, threatening, and attacking my daughter and I. The police refused to arrest her or even tell her to leave us alone. The police also told them that they would not get in trouble if they recorded me while I was at work. I had to file an appeal of the temporary order of protection granted to my corporate landlord, former employers. When I went to court to explain to the judge why he should dismiss the temporary stay for my corporate landlord, former employers, he agreed with me and overturned the decision and told my former employers that my emails are literally asking for help. Keep in mind that this all started because I wouldn't allow wealthy whites living in Hadley apartments to live in the low-income units. Also keep in mind that these council members before you in this room are protecting their former interim city manager and their police department. The harm that my daughter and I have endured over the last 5 years has been.
All right, next up is Paul Quinn.
Good evening, Mayor, council members. My name is Paul Quinn, and I live in Sammamish, and I'm an individual that cares about recycling and composting and reducing what we send to the landfill. I've learned about Mercer Island through public record requests. Let's start with an important fact from a King County survey of trash sent to the landfill, which showed that 2/3 of what is sent to the landfill can be either recycled or composted. So 2/3 of our trash is actually not trash. Tonight I'm going to walk through the first of your 3 handouts that you received. The first table reflects the tonnage disposed of by categories for 2022 and 2023. The second table down shows how the city's tonnage is disposed of. Most notably, 42% of what the city disposes of goes to the landfill, and that amount is better versus 2022. So that's real progress. This is a good time to note that if 42% is going to the landfill, only 58% of what we dispose of is diverted to recycling or composting. The third table down shows the diversion rate for each category. Of special note is commercial and multifamily locations. They just divert 23% and 28% respectively. So essentially over 3/4 of what they dispose of goes to the landfill, 3/4. Table 4 reflects the missed opportunity that I noted at the start of my talk. Since 2 out of 3 pounds we put in the landfill could be recycled or composted, then last year Mercer Island could have diverted an additional 4,300 tons to recycling or composting. The next section down reflects the urgency we face, as each month Mercer Island sends to the landfill another 362 tons. In Table 5 there at the bottom, you see the categories listed, and the red indicates where the category does not have a food scraps yard waste container. It is striking most of the city businesses, 97 of them, do not have a food scraps yard waste container. It's much more striking that 31 of our 55, or about 56% of our multifamily locations, have no way for their residents to compost their food scraps. Handouts 2 and 3 provide recommendations for improving our diversion rates, and I'll review those recommendations in detail at a future meeting. I believe the people of Mercer Island want to live sustainably. They need the tools and they need to receive individual diversion feedback about how they're doing, much like that PSC Energy report that we all receive now. Feedback is a catalyst for change. Thank you.
Thank you. City Clerk?
Mr. Mayor, the next speaker is, pardon me, Jay Greer.
Mute. Hello, can you hear me?
Sure can, welcome.
All right, thank you. So my name is Jay Greer, and I'm a resident of Mercer Island. I've lived on Mercer Island since 2011. I have three teenage children currently in the Mercer Island school system, 2 at the high school and 1 at the middle school. My youngest son, Sam, is an avid mountain bike rider, and I'm an assistant coach of Mercer Island's youth mountain bike racing team. I'd like to start by thanking the city for building the new bike skills area at Dean's Children's Park. My youngest son visits the new BSA multiple times per week. In fact, he's there right now, and I know he and many others are very happy with the result. Big thanks to City Council, the Parks and Rec Commission, and of course all the city personnel and others who helped make this happen. I have a feeling the new BSA will be a key destination for youth activity during the summer, and I fully expect this project will be deemed a success. I do have some minor low-cost suggestions to further improve the new BSA, but I'm going to save those for another time. Beyond thanking the city for the new BSA, I also want to voice my support for the Island Crest Way Corridor Improvements Project. My family of 5 lives by Lake Ridge Elementary School, and across all of us, we own and frequently use 5 traditional bicycles, 2 e-bikes with top speeds around 20 miles an hour, and an e-scooter that my youngest uses with a top speed also around 20 miles an hour. One observation I have from living here for the last 13 years and watching my children grow up is that the most important roadways on Mercer Island, such as Island Crest Way and East and West Mercer Way, are not particularly safe for children and even some adults who are riding bikes, e-bikes, and e-scooters. I appreciate the work the city has done to widen some of the shoulder areas of East and West Mercer Way, and I very much like that work to continue at a good pace. And I'd like the Island Crest Way Corridor Improvements Project to be approved and move forward. I worry every time my wife and kids ride from our home on the south end of Mercer Island to the north end and back. My kids regularly make the trip regularly by bike and scooter in pretty much all weather conditions, and sometimes over my objections outside of daylight hours, which I really don't like, but they do it sometimes anyway. There really isn't a safe way right now for kids to get fully around all the island. I know some parts are safe, but some of the key thoroughfares could use some work. King County actively encourages cycling and has been building infrastructure to support it. It's time we do the same. The potential for accidents between cars and bikes and scooters is going to continue to grow, and I think now is the time to take some additional steps to address the issue. So please move forward with the Island Crest Way Corridor Improvements Project and other projects like this that will provide safer bike and scooter travel around the island. I know later today you're going to be talking about some of the shared use path options when you discuss this topic. The consulting report just came out pretty recently. I haven't really absorbed it completely, so I don't have a full opinion, but maybe I deprioritize the east side options. There are a lot of side streets that intersect with the east side, what they're recommending on the east side. Also, the cost and the tree removal seems a little high to me. I like trees as much as the next person. I would love to figure out a way to do this and not have too great of a near-term impact on the canopy. But at the end of the day, safety of the residents takes priority in my book. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Next up is Jonathan Harrington. Welcome.
Yeah, I'm sorry. So my name is Jonathan Harrington. I live on Mercer Island. I just like to thank the council for its work on the climate action plan and the sustainability work plan that's being updated. And we're very happy that the new sustainability program analyst has been reaching out to community members. And we really look forward to working with her in the future. We're especially happy about the recording greenhouse gas dashboard. It's wonderful that the whole community can see what is going on with their own activities as well as the city activities. I think the tool that's been created is very useful. It's accessible to people, it's understandable, which is really wonderful. So I hope that that will be updated on a yearly basis. It would really be wonderful if we can try to turn the trend line in a downward direction in the future, so we can meet your stated goals of reducing emissions significantly in order to achieve our 2030 reduction goals. And it'd be really wonderful to see some more money in the expenditure budgeted and appropriation required boxes as we move forward to achieve these goals. And especially like to give a shout out to the council liaisons who worked so hard on this plan and then updates, Craig Reynolds, Ted Weinberg, and Jake Jacobson. And thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Next up is Carolyn Boatsman. Welcome.
Thank you. Greetings, council members. My name is Carolyn Boatsman. The Sustainability Work Plan reports a blizzard of activity underway, with more planned for this year and the next biennium. The report is very well written, making it easy to compare the activity with the climate plan itself. I was glad to see, among so many other endeavors, outreach to building owners about the Washington Clean Buildings Act, applications for climate action grants, and work towards an EV charging infrastructure plan. A modest suggestion to improve public awareness would be to place the emphasis on climate when referring to the work program. I recommend calling it the Climate Action Work Plan for several reasons. The work is overwhelmingly climate action, with only one item in the work plan not having a CAP action ID number. Work program items that used to be under the Sustainability Program pre-CAP have largely been subsumed into the CAP. The word sustainability can engender head-scratching and may not inspire people. The homepage of the city website does not feature the word climate. People who are looking for our climate action might not know to look at the Public Works Department under the heading Sustainability. Changing the name of the work program and putting climate on the homepage would improve the visibility of the program. There are many people in the community who are committed to mitigating climate change and are interested in understanding CAP implementation, and there are those who would volunteer to help make it happen, and many have deep background on this subject and can offer ideas. It would be great to determine the best way to bring people together with staff to improve and speed implementation of the CAP. Continuing to reach out to interested people would be an important action in this regard. In transitioning the Council Sustainability Committee to ad hoc regarding this urgent program, I recommend that requests for meetings be maintained both ways, such that either staff or council members who serve on the K4C Outreach Committee or other council members are able to request a meeting. Thank you, staff and council members, for your work on climate action, and thank you for considering my comments.
Thank you. Next up is Trevor Reed.
All right. Hello there, Council. I am commenting today on the consultant's report on Eileen Crest Way and following up on the comments that I submitted in writing to Council specifically regarding the proposed lane widths and how they deviate from best practices as defined by the Federal Highway Administration, the American Association of State and Highway and Transportation Officials, the National Association of City Transportation Officials, and Washington State DOT's guidance, as well as the recommended arterial widths prescribed by both the City of Seattle and the City of Bellevue on high volume arterials that are characteristic or similar to Island Crest Way. In the consultant's proposed report, they have 12.5 feet. That is a half-foot wider than what is prescribed for highway or functional road classification 1 roadways. On a major arterial, all guidance is for between 10 to 12 feet, depending upon conditions. The reason why this is so critical is because there's a direct correlation between lane width and vehicle speed, and based upon existing new guidance from the Federal Highway Administration, the way that we make safety improvements is by designing road facilities that dictate the speeds we want vehicles to go. Speed limit signs do not work because people drive to the design specifications of the road. And the easiest way to moderate drivers' speed is by reducing the lane width, which is the exact opposite as what is proposed by the consultant's report, and that's exceedingly out of place for its proximity to children. Another consequence of lane widths is increased crossing distances. So 12.5 lane width increases the amount of time that you are crossing by 25%. And so consequently, you're increasing the likelihood of someone getting hit, you're increasing the speed that they're getting hit, and so you're increasing the likelihood of a fatality. These wider lane widths are all leading to this project becoming much larger than it needs to be in terms of tree removals, impermeable surface, and costs. And then regarding tree removals, clear zones are talked about frequently in consultant reports for improving safety, and those are inappropriately applied to such a context. Clear zones were developed for rural areas so vehicles could leave the roadway, regain control, and re-enter the roadway safely. That is very contrary to the safety profile of a high-use, multi-use path in a school zone. So I would ask that the council exercise discretion when reviewing clear zones and tree removals and narrow lanes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up is Jim Stanton. Welcome.
Hi, thank you. My name is Jim Stanton. I've lived on Mercer Island since 1985. My wife and I have raised 3 sons who've attended Mercer Island schools. As parents living on the south end, we've long been concerned about how risky it is for people to bicycle on Mercer Island. For example, there's no safe way for students who live on the north end of the island to make it down to Islander Middle School or to the playfields next to it. As we note, if we live on the south end, there's no safe way for students to ride their bicycle up to the high school. The same is going to be true for commuters and particularly for those who will want to go to the new light rail station. But 15 years ago, these concerns caused me and some other residents to start Neighbors in Motion to work with the city to improve bicycling safety on the island. The Island Crest Way corridor is a particularly dangerous place for cyclists of all ages. The city's March 2022 safety study for the corridor listed bicycle safety as the public's #1 concern. With the growth of e-bikes, e-scooters, the opening of the light rail station, the bike skills area now there, and the risks of traveling this area only going to grow for all the families on the island. I should like to note that also during the negotiations for the Sound Transit last mile funding, improving the Island Crest Way corridor was cited as an example of a project that would qualify for funding. Bicycling is now considered an important part of our transportation network at a national, state, and local level. For example, the state's new transportation budget provides $1.3 billion over 10 years for bicycle infrastructure and education. In the next 2 years, Mercer Island's going to start having bicycle education in its schools paid for by the states. It'll only increase the number of kids on bicycles. Creating a safe north-south pathway for bicycles has been on the city's agenda since 1996. And the reasons that that it appeared there have only grown greatly since. Since the report's so new, it's hard to comment on the three alternatives presented, but what is most important, however, is that the city move ahead with making this 1 mile segment safe for all who use it. Thank you.
Thank you. City Clerk, do we have anyone signed up for public comment?
No.
Okay, moving on. Our next item of business is approval of the consent agenda. The consent agenda contains AB 6429, March 8, 2024 payroll certification, certification of claims for March 1, 2024, City Council special hybrid meeting minutes of March 1, 2024, City Council regular hybrid meeting minutes March 5, 2024, AB 6430 Reservoir Booster Pump Station Upgrade Bids Award, AB 6431 Vietnam Veterans Day Proclamation, AB 6407 Arch Housing Trust Fund Project Approvals, AB 6436 Interlocal Agreement with Eastside Fire and Rescue for Mobile Integrated Health Services. Council, is anyone wishing to pull anything from consent?
Yes.
Councilmember Jacobson.
Mayor, I request we pull AB 6431 from the consent agenda and put it as the first item of business.
Okay, City Clerk, please note that AB 6431 Vietnam Veterans Day Proclamation will be the first item of regular business. Council, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda as amended?
So moved. Second.
Okay, moved by Councilmember Reynolds, seconded by Deputy Mayor Rosenbaum. City Clerk, please call the roll.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I am not as slick as Andrea. Sorry. Okay. Councilmember Andrel.
Aye.
Deputy Mayor Rosenbaum.
Aye.
Councilmember Weicker.
Aye.
Councilmember Weinberg.
Aye.
Mayor Neese.
Aye.
Councilmember Reynolds.
Aye.
Councilmember Jacobson.
Aye.
Very well. Consent agenda is approved, and we now move to our first item of regular business, which is now AB 6431 Vietnam Veterans Day Proclamation, and I'll give you the floor, Councilmember Jacobson.
Thank you, Mayor. I asked this be, get a more prominent place for a presentation for several reasons. Our involvement in Vietnam, at least in terms of having military forces stationed and fighting and dying there, ended close to 50 years ago. And those of us who served in Vietnam are a declining bunch as nature takes its course. As I think that has been very clear, there are many Vietnam veterans bear scars of this conflict that appear to be in greater proportion than in prior wars. And those emotional and problems and stresses are also accompanied by physical stresses. So many of us who served in Vietnam have to endure the lifelong effects of Agent Orange, and as to which you're always wondering if the strange cancer is going to hit you next. So I think it's really appropriate that we designate the Vietnam Veterans Day and honor those people who served, whether or not, not only people who served, but those who gave their lives when asked to do so. So that's the reason I ask that we approve this proclamation as written, and so move.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, moved by Councilmember Jacobson, seconded by Councilmember Weinberg. Let me just add that I want to thank you for your service. I appreciate the words, and I appreciate the energy behind bringing this proclamation forward. We owe a huge debt to you and everybody that served. Deputy Mayor Rosenbaum.
Yeah, just want to say the same thing, Jake. It's an honor to serve with you and appreciate your service. And also, I know we have a few Vietnam veterans, war veterans on Mercer Island. I want to thank them for their service. But Jake, you said it beautifully, and appreciate your comments and appreciate your service.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. City Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Jacobson.
Aye.
Mayor Neese.
Aye.
Councilmember Weinberg.
Aye.
Councilmember Androl.
Aye.
Councilmember Reynolds.
Aye.
Deputy Mayor Rosenbaum.
Aye.
Councilmember Weicker.
Aye.
Very good. Proclamation passes. Our next item of regular business is AB 6435, 2025-2026 City Council priorities, and we welcome City Manager Jesse Bond.
Or me.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. At the planning session on March 1st, the City Council had an opportunity to review your City Council priorities. These are the overarching priorities and goals that we use to guide the development of our work plan, and later this year, the biennial budget for the 25-26. So we received your feedback. We did some wordsmithing at the planning session, and Ali has put on screen where we landed. I did want to mention at the planning session, there's a preamble that has always accompanied your priorities, and it was just an oversight on my part that we didn't look at that again. So before you approve the priorities, we wanted you to see the whole document, the preamble, and the 4 priorities. And if everything looks okay, then we would need a motion to make these your priorities.
Okay, well, thank you for wordsmithing that. Council, is there any proposed changes to the preamble or any of these priorities? Not seeing any. Is there a motion to adopt the 2025-2026 City Council priorities?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, moved by Councilmember Weicker, seconded by Deputy Mayor Rosenbaum. Any discussion? Councilmember Weicker.
I just want to thank everybody for that discussion at our retreat and staff for pulling this together, and I think it reflects everything we talked about and everything we're trying to do. So well done, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you. City Clerk, please call the roll.
Thank you. Mayor Neese.
Aye.
Councilmember Jacobson.
Aye.
Councilmember Weinberg.
Aye.
Councilmember Androl.
Aye.
Deputy Mayor Rosenbaum.
Aye.
Councilmember Reynolds.
Aye.
Councilmember Weicker.
Aye.
All right, motion passes. Our next item of regular business is AB 6432, City Council Rules of Procedure Amendments, Resolution Number 1658. And we welcome Chief of Administration, Ally Speaks.
Thank you. I'm wearing many hats this evening. So Council, Exhibit 1 to Agenda Bill 6432 are the recommended and approved amendments to the City Council Rules of Procedure that we slogged through on March 1st. In your agenda bill, you will also notice that there were a few that we missed because there were so many. So I just will share my screen really quickly so we can look at those, and you can let me know if those are approved as well. They are included in the changes in Exhibit 1. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you have.
Okay, Council, are there any questions for the left behind changes, lingering changes? No, not seeing any. All right, Council, is there a
Move to approve.
is there a motion to approve Resolution Number 1658, amending the City Council Rules of Procedure as set forth in Exhibit A?
So moved.
Okay, moved by Councilmember Reynolds, seconded by Councilmember Jacobson. Any discussion? Councilmember Jacobson.
I'd like to thank Ally Speaks for all the work she put in, a lot of which was as a result of my suggestions. I think this is a recognition of one of the immense values you bring to the city, which is not only institutional memory, but but keeping track and doing these things that we need to do periodically. Now, not until 2027, so you're off the hook, I guess, for 3 or 4 years. In any event, thank you for what you've done with us. It's been a lot of work, and I very much admire and respect the work you've done.
Thank you, Councilmember Jacobson.
Here, here. All right. Not seeing any other questions. City Clerk, please call the roll.
Through my tears. Just kidding. Okay, Councilmember Weicker.
Aye.
Councilmember Reynolds.
Aye.
Deputy Mayor Rosenbaum.
Aye.
Councilmember Weinberg.
Aye.
Mayor Neese.
Aye.
Councilmember Jacobson.
Aye.
Councilmember Andrel.
Aye.
All right, motion passes. Our next item of regular business is AB 6434, Sustainability Work Plan Update. We welcome Public Works Deputy Director Elaine Summergren.
Good evening, Council. It is my pleasure this evening to introduce to you all our Sustainability Program Analyst, Alana DeRogatis. Alana was hired by the city in August of last year, and I will say that since she came on with the city, she has been incredibly busy, and I'm sure that showed in the agenda bill for her sustainability work plan. Tonight, she's going to be presenting a lot of information about what she's done so far in terms of the climate action plan implementation and what she's planning to do for the rest of this year, and then a little bit of a look ahead into 25-26 biennium plans. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Alana.
Welcome,
Thanks,
Alana.
Good evening, Council. My name is Alana DeRogatis, and I am, as Elaine mentioned, the Sustainability Program Analyst for the city. And tonight I'll be presenting the Sustainability Work Plan Update.
All right, Council, I understand we're going to have a number of slides, and we're going to wait for questions to the end. So I'm going to let you, Alana, just carry on through the deck, and we'll get you then.
All right, thank you. All right, so here's just the agenda for my presentation tonight. First, I'm going to start off with a kind of quick recap of sustainability on Mercer Island. We'll then give a brief overview of the Climate Action Plan, or the CAP. After, I will walk through the progress the city has made thus far in implementing the CAP since its adoption. And finally, I will discuss the priority items for the next biennium. So starting in 2007, the city adopted greenhouse gas reduction targets, starting with 25% reduction by 2020, all the way through 2050 with an 80% reduction goal. In 2011, the city of Mercer Island became a founding member of the K4C. And then in 2021, the 2050 greenhouse gas reduction target was updated from 80% to 95% to be in alignment with the change by King County. And then most recently, in 2023, the city adopted its first climate action plan. And this is obviously a very brief overview of all of the work that has been done previously, but just hitting those highlights. So just a quick overview of the Climate Action Plan. It's a complex document that consists of 59 different actions for the city to take in order to achieve the greenhouse gas reduction targets that have been set. These actions are categorized into 6 different focus areas, shown here on the slide. Each focus area has its own specific goals and additional targets on top of the greenhouse gas reduction targets. The abbreviations are also included here. You will see those on the subsequent slides to identify specific CAP actions. So that's the action ID that's in the document. So in the next few slides, I'm going to talk through all the work that's been done since the plan's adoption. And while not all of this work is tied directly to those actions, I wanted to make sure that those that are tied to actions are specifically identified there. So first off, we'll start with cross-cutting and municipal, and I just want to point out on this first slide, all of the subsequent slides as well, when I talk about a new focus area, have the goals, as well as the 2030 targets there at the bottom, just as kind of a refresher. So starting with this focus area, the city recently joined PSC's Strategic Energy Management Program. This program provides PSC customers with incentives for making low and no cost changes, which are primarily behavior changes to building occupants and operational changes to how the building is run. So making these changes to reduce energy use in buildings. So this is not a specific CAP action, but participation in this 3-year program aligns with the overall CAP target of achieving carbon neutral municipal operations by 2030. There is an action in the CAP that calls for climate-informed city decision-making. And to get started on this, as the budget development process gets underway, for upcoming capital projects. I, as the Sustainability Program Analyst, am participating in these early discussions so we can put a sustainability or climate-focused lens on projects from the outset. And still in the cross-cutting and municipal focus area, but this deserved its own slide, we recently completed reporting on the 2022 greenhouse gas emissions for the city, and we published an interactive dashboard on the city website. And this also is a specific CAP action, and I'm gonna do a brief walkthrough with the dashboard here today. If you go under our sustainability pages on the website, it's under the greenhouse gas emissions data and tracking page. It starts off with this overview as shown here, and you can make it full screen. It's very interactive, but just to kind of give a brief overview, this is the community emissions, so total island emissions, including municipal operations. On the left-hand side of the screen, first starts off with the definition, which is the unit of measurement that is the standard for greenhouse gas reporting, which is metric tons of carbon dioxide equivalents, so taking all the greenhouse gases and converting them into carbon dioxide just to have a single way of comparing all the different emission sources. So on the left side of each page, it includes the relevant CAP targets for the different sectors, as well as some key takeaways from the overall reporting. So starting off on the community on this page, you can see from the pie chart that the built environment and transportation sectors are our biggest sources of emissions on the island. On the bar chart below, you can see that island-wide emissions have remained pretty consistent since 2017. 2020 reporting is the last time that it was completed, so there is no 2021 data at this point. But another small note is that from 2022 versus 2020, emissions have gone up. As you can see, it's primarily due to an increase in transportation emissions post-COVID, things kind of rebounding. So at the bottom of the dashboard, you can see there's different tabs for built environment, transportation and solid waste, as these are the primary targets for reductions. So on this built environment page, you can see that the source of energy emissions and consumption are broken down by sector, so residential natural gas, electricity versus commercial. And you can see here that the bottom two are both residential, and they are the highest contributors to emissions on the island. We are also keeping track of green power accounts with PSE, seeing those increase over time, and tracking solar installations. And you can see a nice peak there in 2018 when the last Solarize campaign was run. Moving right along to transportation, you can see the different subgroups in that first bar graph at the top. Aviation is that top lighter blue category. We only started tracking that in 2019, which is why it's missing from the prior years. And you can also note that off-road is another, off-road equipment is included in this, and that includes construction and lawn and garden equipment emissions in transportation. The vehicle miles traveled by year, the bar graph towards the bottom, is based on modeled data from the Puget Sound Regional Council, which is why you don't see the expected dip that you might anticipate for 2020 when transportation was minimal. It's just because it's based on modeled data on vehicle registrations. But here we are also tracking the EV ownership on the island in the bottom right corner, which as you can see is increasing steadily, which is great. Finally, solid waste. We are tracking both emissions as well as the tons of waste disposed by the different categories, so compost, recycled, and landfilled waste. And finally, we have a tab for municipal operations, which as I said is included in the overall community emissions. It accounts for about 0.5% of island-wide emissions. And on the municipal operations page, we have a chart for energy, transportation, and solid waste, as those are the main things we're highlighting for a community and are big contributors to municipal operations, waste, or emissions as well. So that is just a quick run through of the dashboard. Can jump back to the presentation and start to talk about the next focus area, which is buildings and energy. So far in this focused area, we focused primarily on heat pump conversions, and that's because we are part of the Energy Smart Eastside program. There was a pilot that kicked off back in 2022, really started in earnest more in 2023. That program is run in collaboration with Bellevue, Kirkland, Redmond, and Issaquah. And through that program, the city funded the installation of 2 heat pumps for income-qualified residents and helped facilitate the installation of 4 additional heat pumps through the market rate track. Through this program, all islanders are eligible for a $500 equipment discount, and there are other additional incentives and rebates based on income qualifications. We're continuing to offer the incentives through the rest of this year and hopefully ongoing, as supporting residential and commercial property owners in replacing natural gas furnaces with heat pumps is a specific CAP action. So the next focus area I'm talking about today is transportation. Late last year, staff submitted applications for 2 different grant opportunities to secure funding for installing additional EV charging stations on the island. Unfortunately, we were not awarded funding from either one of those applications, but we're continuing to monitor for upcoming opportunities. The transportation focus area, as I mentioned, looking at the dashboard, also includes off-road equipment as well. So there is a specific CAP action around electrifying lawn and construction equipment and implementing a ban on gas-powered leaf blowers. As a first step towards looking at this, the city purchased 3 backpack and 3 handheld electric leaf blowers for a pilot with our Parks Department. This pilot is still ongoing. Staff are planning to host an open house by the end of this year to provide an opportunity for elected officials to try the equipment and provide some feedback. So hopefully we'll have some more information on that soon. So consumption and disposal, another big focus area. Following a request from a Mercer Island student, when I first started with the city, we established an on-island battery recycling option in collaboration with the Mercer Island Thrift Shop. We've already collected well over 1,200 pounds of batteries since establishing this option last September, so it's been really successful thus far. Also in September, City Council adopted a resolution to sign on to the King County RePlus Pledge, and RePlus is King County's approach to keeping valuable materials out of the landfill and reducing climate impacts. So we're proud to be part of that. In 2024, so starting earlier this year, staff conducted a waste audit for city buildings as well as all of our parks. And that was to gather an accurate assessment of municipal waste generation and also to identify areas for improvement in municipal sorting practices to help reduce solid waste emissions on the municipal level. We also applied for and received a grant from the Washington Department of Ecology to facilitate regular cleanings for the I-90 ramps to better control the litter accumulation that's coming onto the island from the highway. And the final focus area that we've really gotten started on in earnest is the natural systems focus area. And I'll just note quickly on the bottom of the slide is the target, which is a 10% transition of 10% of city open spaces from the active restoration phase to a monitoring and maintenance phase. And to that end, one of the CAP actions in this focus area is to complete an assessment of all open spaces in order to establish what a monitoring and maintenance phase looks like and to create that baseline. So in order to get that started, we have recently hired a contractor that will start on that work this year. So we'll have an idea of what that looks like. So that's all the work that's been done thus far. So now I'm gonna talk through some of the priority items for the 25-26 work plan. And that's gonna get started with just a kind of recap again of the findings from the 2022 greenhouse gas report. Just big takeaways is that community emissions have increased 9% since 2020. As I mentioned briefly while walking through the dashboard, that's mostly due to an increase in transportation emissions. But that puts us only down 2% from 2007 emissions, which I'll remind you, the goal is for a 50% decrease from 2007 emissions by 2030. So we only have 6 years in order to close that 48% gap and hit that target. Municipal operations, on the other hand, have decreased 8% since 2020, which is great, but we still have a ways to go in order to achieve carbon neutrality by 2030. So that's, with that in mind, we're looking at kind of splitting 25-26 priority action items into community emissions reductions and municipal. So starting off with community emissions reductions, the first thing that is a priority is to continue to track and report on greenhouse gas emissions and maintain that public dashboard, because it's invaluable to have that information and also to be able to share it frequently with the public. We want to continue to participate in partnerships that promote resident energy efficient electrification. On the right-hand side of the screen, I have a graph up with King County data, but we can extrapolate from that some data on Mercer Island. Based on the current rate of heat pump adoptions, that's the gray line towards the bottom. If we were to continue with business as usual, we will not be able to hit our 2050 emissions reduction targets. We need to close that gap up to the yellow line, which is the sales needed, like the rate of adoption needed in order to meet those goals. And so for Mercer Island, that gap, that purple line, equates to about 270 additional heat pumps. So those are heat pumps that we are facilitating the adoption of that wouldn't happen otherwise. So I think participating in programs like the Energy Smart Eastside program will help maintain that momentum and really move that needle forward. Additionally, we want to support the growth of community solar energy generation and storage. Harkening back to the solar installations highlighted on the dashboard, the Solarize campaign was very successful back in 2018. So I want to look at projects like that again in the future. To tackle transportation emissions, we need to develop an electric vehicle charging infrastructure plan. As we saw on the dashboard, Mercer Island already has one of the highest EV registrations across Washington State, and the island needs to be able to support increasing numbers of EVs in the incoming years, so we need to have the proper infrastructure to support that. Though it is a significantly smaller subset of community emissions, we still need to continue to increase the overall diversion rate of waste from the landfill from the island, primarily focused at commercial and multifamily properties, as they have the lowest diversion rates, significantly lower than residential thus far. We are also looking at implementing a tree planting incentive program to encourage planting on residential properties where most of the plantable space on the island exists. There's a specific cap target tied to this, and additionally, the sooner we can start planting those trees, the sooner we will see the benefits from having additional canopy cover on the island. And finally, municipal emissions reduction strategies. We have a lot of opportunities coming up as the city begins planning for future facilities, but really just looking at what we're working with right now. We're looking at applying for grants for energy efficiency retrofits for current city buildings that we're still occupying, as well as renewable energy generation, solar panels, as well as battery storage, and fleet electrification, as transportation is clearly the biggest contributor to city emissions. Though transportation for municipal operations does include not only our fleet, but also employee commutes. Other things we want to focus on is low-cost municipal operations changes, including building energy efficiency, like participating in the PSC Strategic Energy Management Program, minimizing waste to landfill, so utilizing the data that we've gathered from the waste audits, and improving commute options for staff, so as I mentioned, to contribute to driving down those transportation emissions. We also want to develop a plan to assess current carbon sequestration rate of existing public land on the island, so how much carbon we are capturing from our tree canopy and other green space, because that information will go far in terms of informing how we can achieve carbon neutrality by 2030. So that's my presentation, if anyone has any questions.
Very good. Thank you for that presentation. Council, opening it up to questions. Councilmember Reynolds.
Yeah, thanks. Great presentation. I think you're aware that, and you've met with an island resident that's been working on his own version of a climate dashboard with sustainability markers. And I just wonder what your impressions have been in that with that tool, and is there room to incorporate some of what he's done into our own dashboard? Since based on my own amateurish review, it seems like he's got some additional things he's tracking and some more timely sources to data than some of the things we have, and it seems like there might be room to incorporate it.
Yes, absolutely. My plan is to get those dashboards linked onto our city websites in the future as well, and I'm working with them to just make some final tweaks in terms of legibility. But otherwise, I think the work he's doing has been great.
Excellent. Thank you.
Okay, Councilmember Weicker.
Wow, Alana, well done. Our former mayor, Bruce Bassett, would love to have heard that 10 years ago.
He still watches these meetings.
I was going to send him a
He's
link if I
jealous.
can dig up his email. No, that was such a passion of his, and he would have loved to have, I think he laid the groundwork for the climate action plan we did, so I'm going to track him down and send him this presentation. The dashboard's really cool. Did you create that, or is that some other platform?
That's on Power BI, so Cascadia Consulting created that for us. Yeah.
Of course, they're awesome too. Okay, so it seems like fleet electrification might be kind of a low-hanging fruit thing, but I'm not sure where we are at our city fleet electrification thing. And I know we need infrastructure with it, and everybody's pushing for that, but infrastructure takes a little while. And I have other ideas about fleets we could electrify, but for now, I'll just leave it with the city fleet.
Elena, let me, on that same vein, ask a question about EVs. When we register our EV, I've noticed that the registration is the most expensive in the family, and it's full of state fees for seem punitive penalties for driving an EV, you know, offset not buying gasoline, driving an EV because it's an EV. I was curious if you knew of our TBD, our Transportation Benefit District. Does it still exist? And if it does, do we have the ability to exempt EVs from that charge?
Answer mine is
Jason?
I can help with the first part that we still do. So Jason Kinner, Chief of Operations, we still do have our TBD. Whether or not we can look at exemptions, we will have to talk with Matt Mornick, our finance department, and B.O. Park, our city attorney, to see if that's a possible. We can certainly look into that and circle back with you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, I'd be curious to look at it. Maybe we don't repeat the same disincentive that's happening at the state level on the EVs. Council, any other questions? You must have done a good job, Elena, because they normally are full of them.
I'm glad. Thank you.
All right, we look forward to seeing you here again. Our next item of regular business is AB 6433, the 2024 City Council Committee and Liaison Assignments. Council, Deputy Mayor Rosenbaum and I have reviewed the liaison assignments to advisory boards and commissions, City Council, local regional committees. The 2024 City Council liaison appointments are Exhibit 1 to AB 6433 in your packet, and these appointments will be effective April 1. Councilor, any questions on that? Not seeing any. We're going to move. I want to thank you for your willingness to serve on these assignments in 2024, and we'll turn to City Manager Bond regarding her recommendation to transition the Sustainability Committee.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. No PowerPoint on this. Just wanted to call out that the one standing committee that we've had consistently over the years is the Sustainability Committee. They did some really fantastic work getting the Climate Action Plan and a number of other policy items to the finish line. You know, we are at the phase of our sustainability work plan where we don't have, you know, a consistent need, in my opinion, to be meeting every month. All actually of our other committees or committee-like functions are provided ad hoc. So basically we stand up the groups as needed at the direction of the council, and usually I come to you and say, here's a moment where we need the ad hoc committee to stand up. So my recommendation for efficiency and due respect to your time and the staff time, that we transition the Sustainability Committee to ad hoc. And it would likely look a lot like your ad hoc finance committee. So I anticipate a work item probably later this year related to the ban on gas-powered, lawn equipment. That would potentially be an item that council would want a committee to work ahead of it coming to the council. In the following biennium, you have the big electrical vehicle citywide charging plan. That would be perhaps an item that you would like a committee to work. So that's the reason for my recommendation. I think it's a more efficient approach to that type of work.
Very good. Thank you for that. Councilor, are there any questions? Not seeing any questions. Is there a motion to transition the City Council Sustainability Committee to an ad hoc Sustainability Committee to provide support for future policy-related work items as needed?
So moved. Second.
Okay, that was moved by Councilmember Anderall, seconded by Councilmember Weicker. Any discussion?
Yes.
Councilmember Weinberg.
So two of the members of the outreach, two of the city council members are part of the outreach committee for the King County Cities Climate Coalition or Collaboration, or K4C. And if we were to partner more closely with K4C, the city might have a better chance of obtaining state funding for some of its CAP actions in future years. As those two members happen to also be on the Sustainability Committee, I think the Sustainability Committee provides an excellent forum for the opportunity of seeing what we can do to leverage that connection. There was a suggestion made during appearances of if we're going to take this down from being a standing committee to being an ad hoc committee, to enabling the ad hoc committee to be called either by the staff or by members of the committee. So I move that we amend this motion to allow both the members of the committee and the staff to call an ad hoc committee meeting.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, moved by Councilmember Weinberg, seconded by Councilmember Reynolds. I'm going to let the city clerk finish typing.
Just a point of clarification, which committee would be calling that ad hoc committee? It's the K4C group?
Well, it's the three members of the Sustainability Committee. So my motion is that any one of the three or whichever members we put on that committee would be able to request the convening of that committee.
So if we don't have a standing committee, we don't have membership, right? Like, wouldn't the ad hoc be pulled at the time we needed them?
That is how you've done it previously. When we have a need for an ad hoc committee, the council, usually an agenda item comes to the full city council and for direction and appointment. It would be unusual, Councilmember Weinberg, with all due respect, for a minority of the council to drive work in that way. But if it's the pleasure of the council to convey that authority in some way, I can think about how we would need to support that.
Okay. It is the pleasure of the council to form and task a committee. So the majority of the council already has this authority. Okay, council, any other discussion? Councilmember Reynolds.
Just wanted to react to Councilmember Weinberg's comment a little bit. During legislative sessions in particular, there's a lot going on related to sustainability, and we saw that at K4C where we were meeting, I believe, weekly for most of the legislative session. And there are times when there are timely matters that would be worth coming back to strategize with other members of the council on. And I think there needs to be some sort of a structure to allow that committee to pop up on an as-needed basis, at least during the legislative session, even realizing we can't make decisions on our own without a quorum. At least it would be useful to talk about the issues and decide if things should be elevated to the full council. And that seems like the right way to do it. I'm not sure if the right way to do this is to have an ad hoc committee that is in some ways still standing, meaning there are people assigned to it and exists and it doesn't have regular meetings, but we can convene them at will. Or if we need an ability to quickly stand up an ad hoc committee that doesn't exist, but one way or another, there should be some forum to address this.
Just to clarify, while the legislature is in session, is that your point?
I'm open to it being all the time, but I think that's where it's most needed because things are happening fast.
Got it. Councilmember Anderl.
Yeah, I'm just trying to think this through because I didn't expect this motion, but it seems to me that it kind of guts the city manager's desire to move this committee to an ad hoc status because it leaves a committee in place with members who have more authority now to call meetings than they, I think, otherwise would, or, to convene a meeting. So, I think council can decide in November or December, once we start moving toward the legislative session, whether we think the Sustainability Committee would be useful to be stood up on an ad hoc basis during legislative session. But I don't think it's appropriate for council to cede that authority right now. I'm very supportive of the city manager's original proposal.
Thank you. Councilmember Weicker.
I'll just remind us all that we put together a legislative agenda that gives our leadership a chance to carry that forward. And then individually, if we want to be down in Olympia on our own, we're certainly able to be down there, but not on behalf of the council. So I'm more in favor of having a legislative agenda reflect our climate action goals for whatever legislative session, because I agree it moves too fast.
Okay. Council, any other discussion?
Just one other comment. I think our goals are all aligned in terms of we want to get more funding for our climate action plan. And we did make a valiant attempt in 2023 to get more funding by applying for grants for EV charging facility, for electric sidewalk sweeper, et cetera. And I think we should learn from the fact that those attempts were not successful to try to find a strategy that might work or might have a chance of getting funding through a regional coalition that has more diversity and has more staffing to it. And I'm trying to find some way that we can partner with the K4C. If there's not support on the council for extending the Sustainability Committee, if we can at least find some other way to leverage the willing partnership of the K4C to try and help us get that funding so we can move our climate action plan actions better.
You know, I'm a little confused because we have membership in K4C, one of which includes you. What stops you from making that advocacy in your time at K4C?
I do make that advocacy on the K4C, but when I asked if I could introduce Alana to the K4C or to form or join a group with the K4C asking for funding for the, say, electric vehicle infrastructure, I was informed, no, we're partnering primarily with AWC and we're going to apply for these grants on our own. I'm wondering if there might be another approach that might work in the next session, and willing to help to the extent that the council and staff are interested in reaching out to an additional partner.
Okay, understood. City Clerk, please call the roll. This is on the amendment to the motion.
Councilmember Reynolds.
Aye. Aye.
Deputy Mayor Rosenbaum.
No.
Councilmember Jacobson. Councilmember Anderl.
Nay.
Councilmember Weicker. Mayor Neese.
Nay.
Councilmember Weinberg.
Aye.
Okay, the amendment to the motion does not pass. Council, any discussion on the main motion? Not seeing any, please call the roll.
Councilmember, you good?
Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Jacobson he was waving his hand.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Turn my mic on. From the presentation by our sustainability analyst, I thought was very impressive, and I'm sure that there's some push of our city manager behind what she does to systematize and really analyze these kinds of things. So I think that I'm supportive of the main motion because I think we're headed in the right direction. Whether we can get there or not is going to depend somewhat on what the legislature does. How many people are, for example, going to sign up for heat pumps at $30,000 to $40,000 out of their own pocket, which is the case in certain instances. That's not something we can solve, and probably the only legislature can solve that. But at any rate, I'm in favor of the motion, and I'm very impressed with the work of our sustainability analyst and really taking the bit in her teeth, to be colloquial about it, on a whole lot of fronts and making progress on everything we can. So I'm in favor of the motion.
Very good, thank you. Any other discussion?
Yep.
Councilmember Weicker.
Real quick, I just want to say that K4C is more of a sharing and information forum, from what I'm told, and then as the legislature comes up, it's where we can kind of keep up on what's happening down there. But some of the work that Alana was talking about, we can work directly with our partners at Recology and PSE to address those key things, and then work through our own funding and our own budgets, and also have Alana keep track on the opportunities to apply for grants. So I think we have enough coverage there in trying to solicit program support and funding support to keep the climate action plan moving forward. So that was just what I was going to say. We can reach out to our partners without having all that association work as well.
Councilmember Weinberg.
Yeah, so I'm delighted with the work that Alana is doing and the progress that we're making on the climate action plan. So I want to make sure that the amendment I was suggesting is not a criticism of her or the city, and just wanted to find ways that that K4C and myself and other members who are on the outreach committee to help form coalitions around the region so that we can actually get a yes on one of our grant applications in the future.
Okay. Not seeing any other discussion. City Clerk, please call the roll.
thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councilmember Anderl.
Aye.
Councilmember Weinberg.
Nay.
Councilmember Reynolds,
Aye.
Councilmember Jacobson,
Aye.
Councilmember Weicker,
Aye.
Mayor Neese,
Aye.
Deputy Mayor Rosenbaum.
Aye.
All right, motion passes. Before we begin the next agenda item, I need to recuse myself from the discussion and debate as of a conflict of interest regarding the Island Crest Way Corridor Improvements Project. I sought an advisory opinion from the city's ethics officer regarding this agenda item and received an opinion that there is a conflict of interest as I own property that may be impacted by the project in some 0% design renderings that were included in the agenda packet. While the City Council has reviewed this topic before and I participated in discussion, there are now renderings which show my property being impacted. Thus, there's a need for me to recuse myself from further involvement while city staff research and make future determinations on my involvement in future deliberations. So I'm going to turn the meeting over to Deputy Mayor Rosenbaum and wish you the best of luck.
Coming back?
I am not.
Our next item of regular business is AB 6421, Island Crest Way Corridor Improvements Project Update. And we welcome Chief of Operations Jason Kittner.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Jason Kittner, Chief of Operations. With me this evening is Patrick Yamashita, our Deputy Public Works Director and City Engineer, as well as Bryce Corrigan from KPG Somas to introduce the Island Crest Way Shared Use Pathway Alternatives and discussion this evening. As it's been referenced in public comment and previous testimony, this has been a project in the TIP that's been discussed multiple times. Our goal tonight is not to seek a council decision on a preferred alternative, but to solicit feedback and additional considerations that staff should take into consideration on the future of this project. As outlined in the agenda bill, and you'll see in the subsequent presentation, there are a lot of impacts regarding this project, but also some very good benefits as well. So there's definitely trade-offs in the analysis and discussion regarding the alternatives analysis. So with that, I will pass it over to Mr. Yamashita to introduce the topic and our team presenting this evening.
Thank you, Jason. For the record, I'm Patrick Yamashita, City Engineer and Deputy Public Works Director. The agenda bill before you is an update on the Island Crest Way Corridor Improvements Project, as Jason mentioned. Also, like he mentioned, this is really an initial look and a discussion.
Your audio is coming through pretty faint.
Oh, okay. Let me move my microphone. Is this any better?
It's a little
better?
bit, you might have to use your loud dad voice.
Oh, okay.
And we lost your
Okay.
video in the process.
All right. Again, this is an update to the Island Crest Way Corridor Improvements Project. This project was conceptualized back in 2022 as the result of the Island Crest Way Safety Study. It was completed in 2022, and as a result, the project was added to the 6-year TIP in June of 2022. As part of this project, the City Council asked staff to come up with shared use path alternatives for consideration. Tonight, the main focus is on those alternatives after a brief overview of the project. Bryce Corrigan from KPG Somas is our lead engineer on the project, and he's going to be the one providing the bulk of the update tonight. Following the completion of his presentation, I'm going to wrap up with a couple of closing remarks and then present a few discussion topics to guide the council and help staff move forward on next steps. So with that, take it away, Bryce.
Thank you, Patrick, and thank you, Council, for having me tonight to present our team's investigation into this corridor and how we can improve the safety. So with that, I will share my screen. And Patrick, if you wouldn't mind confirming that
That's
you
me.
can see the presentation.
Yes.
Great. All right, as Patrick stated, I'm Bryce Corrigan. I'm a civil engineer with KPG Somas, and we were selected by the city to help develop the projects along Island Crest Way from 90th Ave Southeast to Southeast 68th Street. A couple goals for tonight. provide task updates, project element updates on our scope of work, present draft shared use path alternatives, share a similar project example, and open the floor to questions and discussion. So with that, let's get right in. This presentation is about 12 to 15 minutes, so I encourage questions along the way, but hopefully some of them are answered as we go through. Brief task updates. Project elements in our scope of work included crosswalk improvements at the southern entrance to Island Crest Elementary. We're proposing a new pedestrian signal at the existing RRFB crossing, a new RRFB crossing at Southeast 62nd Street, and enhancing the existing crossing at Southeast 63rd with a new RRFB. And RRFB are those rectangular rapid flashing beacons that you see throughout the town center. Another task that we were scoped to provide is a corridor-wide illumination study. That draft is complete and in staff review. Additionally, we provided a corridor tree assessment from 90th Ave Southeast to Southeast 68th Street, in which we surveyed and assessed over 550 trees within the right-of-way within our project limits. That draft is also complete and in with staff review. Another feasibility study, intersections of Southeast 53rd Place and Southeast 68th Street. That draft study is complete, and we're planning to submit it to staff for review in the next week or so. And then finally, which is the bulk of our presentation this evening, is the shared use path pre-design report. We're going to present some alternatives this evening, which we kind of expect and welcome discussion as we look forward to next steps of these important improvements along this section of Island Crest Way. A little project context. This section of Island Crest Way is a missing link in the north-south bike network. There's been expressed need for improved pedestrian facilities. There's several destinations, including the new bike area within Island Crest Park, Island Park Elementary, and Pioneer Park along this corridor. There's multiple residential neighborhoods that this corridor serves, and you have the South End shopping area off Southeast 68th Street. As Patrick stated, a lot of these projects were developed after the safety study was completed, and during that safety study, our project partner, DKS Associates, they did a public input survey, and they received almost 500 respondents. The number one concern along this segment, or this section of Island Crest Way, is bicycle safety. You can see some other project metrics. 9% of respondents walk along Island Crest Way, 85 or more comments, which is about 20% of the total comments, were roughly 20% of the total comments were about improved lighting throughout the corridor. So with that, the three alternatives we're going to present today, and there's many alternatives for this corridor, but the three we're going to discuss today are a separated bike lane facility, an east side shared use path, and a west side shared use path. The photos you can see in this graphic are some existing conditions along the corridor. The first alternative depicted here in this Google Maps photo simulation is the separated bike lane facilities. This project proposes to construct new separated bike lanes with a 3-foot buffer and vertical delineators, new curb and gutter, new vegetated buffer, and new concrete sidewalks along the entire corridor on both sides of the street. This photo here is taken looking north in front of Island Crest Park. The park is on your left. And we developed project metrics to compare each alternative that we're presenting tonight, and some of those can be seen here, and they were also provided in your draft design report. But a few that we looked at: new impervious surface, utility impacts, trees to be removed, and canopy impacts, which we'll touch on later. Existing storm drainage modifications, vehicle traffic impacts, pedestrian impacts, and construction costs. As we go through these alternatives, this graphic will remain constant and the metrics will change. And so the low, medium, and high are all relative to each other. They're not relative to other alternatives that could be discussed. They are just relative to the three presented this evening. This photo simulation is of an east side shared use path facility. This would proposed to construct a new wider vegetated buffer with new street trees and a new 10 to 12-foot shared use path along the east side of the corridor. The west side would remain unaffected, and the facilities on the west side would stay as they are existing. No impacts, minimal impacts to vehicle traffic. All the work would happen on the east side of the corridor. Again, some project metrics as compared to the other ones. We ranked this one to have high utility impacts as the PSE high voltage power lines run along the east side of the corridor, as well as a lot of communication and PSE vaults that would be likely in conflict with the back of the shared use path. Vehicle traffic rated low, pedestrian impact we rated high due to the conflict of the only existing paved walkway along this stretch of Island Crest Way. While we were investigating the east side shared use path, staff asked us to analyze a second alignment. This second alignment goes from Island Crest Elementary, the school crossing, to Southeast 59th Place, or Street, excuse me. And this one increases the width of the vegetated buffer and moves the pathway further to the east, closer to the property line. This alignment within that small segment of the east side shared use path would impact the existing hedge that's within the right of way, and we'd propose to assess any privacy issues with those affected parcels with a privacy fence. A lot of the project metrics remain the same. The big difference with option A and that alignment revision is we could potentially preserve 10 to 15 trees between Island Crest Elementary and Southeast 59th Street. But generally, project cost and the other metrics presented are the same. And our third alternative we'd like to present is a west side shared use path. This project proposes to construct a new vegetated buffer with new street trees and a 10 to 12-foot shared use path along the west side of the corridor, with minimal to no improvements on the east side. Again, the project metrics, we rated several of them low due to kind of the same reasoning. Vehicle traffic, this project constructs everything outside the roadway prism. Pedestrian traffic can be rerouted to only on the east side during construction of this new facility. Storm drainage modifications, low. Utility impacts, low, as all of the power and cable are primarily along the east side. And then trees are slightly lower, impact to the canopy slightly lower. And again, we'll talk about the canopy here in a minute. Briefly, here's the three alternatives presented. We have the separated bike lane facility, which proposes to construct new separated bike lanes off the existing edge of roadway with new curb and gutter, new vegetated buffer, new cement concrete sidewalks. The east side shared use path focuses the improvements along the east side of the corridor, constructing a new vegetated buffer, new street trees, and a 10 to 12-foot wide shared use path. And the west side shared use path focuses improvements on the west side of the corridor, constructing a new vegetated buffer, new street trees, and a new 10 to 12-foot shared use path. Let's get a break for a drink of water. Okay, so as part of this effort of the alternative analysis, we performed a tree assessment. And this assessment, the assessment area was from Southeast 63rd to 90th Ave Southeast. We didn't move south. We didn't assess south of 63rd because we intend to connect into the existing paved pathway within Pioneer Park until the intersection improvements are determined at Southeast 68th Street. So this is the existing tree canopy. The reddish, it's red on my screen, hopefully it's red on yours, is the historic canopy. That's a lot of those large diameter London planes that you see along the east side that present themselves in the fall with the beautiful fall colors and the fall foliage that creates that at-home feel as you drive south on Island Crest Way. The green is the native infill. That's all the Douglas firs, the pines, the evergreens, and the kind of khaki brown color is the any trees that were planted less than 30 years ago, categorized as the young canopy. So this is the first alternative when just looking at the existing canopy. We're not going to project any proposed canopy scenarios, but just impact to the existing. You can kind of see where the red and the green change between the two alternatives. I like to categorize this one as a general thinning out of the entire canopy along Island Crest Way. The east side shared use path, as expected, impacts majority of the trees along the east side and preserves the majority of them along the west side, because we're widening the existing pathway that's roughly 5 to 6 feet to a 10 to 12 foot pedestrian facility. And option A, you could see some of the historic canopy come back into the picture because of relocating the pathway further away from the existing trees. And then the west side shared use path primarily impacts the canopy on the west side of the street, preserving all the London planes along the east side. And it's really condensed to one area between the Island Crest Park and Southeast 63rd, where some of the larger trees are planted closer to the roadway edge. So here's just, I'll leave this up so you can look at it, and I apologize if I'm going a little fast. Summary sheet of the alternatives discussed tonight. There's trade-offs, benefits, and impacts to improve the safety of the bike and pedestrian experience along this segment of Island Crest Way. There's urban forest impacts, and restoration needs to be a top priority. The new impervious surface runoff may require stormwater treatment, and the traffic and pedestrian construction impacts vary between the alternatives. This is a summary table that was also presented in the draft design report. Couple funding notes. Projects like these and each alternative presented tonight make a strong candidate for funding through the Transportation Improvement Board, WashDOT Active Transportation Programs, or the Puget Sound Regional Council. This corridor is a strong candidate for Department of Ecology stormwater funding. Based on the city's preliminary infiltration feasibility mapping, this segment of Island Crest Way presents an opportunity to infiltrate stormwater runoff. More investigation would be required through final design. However, this area just presents an opportunity to investigate and hopefully treat some of the stormwater runoff from these projects. And inclusion of a project like these in the TIP creates a stronger grant application. Okay, last little bit here. Similar project example. KPG Somist helped deliver a project very similar to the topic we're covering tonight along Island Crest Way in the cities of Clyde Hill and Medina. The photo here, the city of Clyde Hill is on the left side of this photo, and the city of Medina is on the right side of this photo. So it was a dual agency project delivery. Project constructed shared use paths on both the east and west side of the corridor with no changes to lane widths, travel lanes, roadway impacts, number of lanes. We primarily focused the improvements outside the roadway prism. Project length is roughly 1,200 linear feet, a quarter of the length discussed this evening. It was $2.5 million construction value in 2018, and over 100 trees were removed in this project of various sizes, species, and health. So again, this was a pre-existing photo. You can see the undefined roadway edge, the mature trees that were planted, the limited sidewalk capabilities on both sides, and this photo is taken from 2011. This is right after construction was complete. You can see the new vegetative buffer, the new street trees, the new shared use paths. We had a railing on the Medina side of the picture, which is the right, and a new privacy fence on the Clyde Hill side with a small retaining wall. And behind that wall was completely vegetated as well. And then this is 3 years after construction was complete. You can see all the foliage maturing and turning green and coming together with the new irrigation system. I will note that this project did construct new illumination for the shared use path and the roadway as part of the whole project improvements. But again, we didn't change lane usage, we didn't change number of lanes, we primarily focused the improvements to the ped and bike facilities outside the travel lanes. So just one more time, I'll go through these photos. This is existing conditions in 2011. That's right after construction. And that's 3 years after construction. I was going to take a new picture, but it was in the middle of winter when we were developing this and nothing had grown in yet. In summary, all the project elements that we're helping staff evaluate and look at and deliver focus on safety along Island Crestway. The crosswalk improvements are slated for construction this summer. Tree and illumination studies guide the implementation and help support the projects through tree preservation and incremental illumination improvements. An incremental approach to this whole corridor's improvements moves the whole safety aspect forward. The intersection feasibility studies are nearly complete, and those will be in review with staff in the next couple of weeks. And the shared use path alternatives presented tonight have varying benefits and impacts. It's a complex project, and it will require trade-offs to minimize those impacts along this corridor. So with that, I will turn it back over to Patrick.
Thank you, Bryce. City Council, I just have 3 remaining slides to cover. The first one, if you can go back one, Bryce.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
Is a cost comparison, and it just shows several Mercer Island capital projects and their costs for perspective relative to the Island Crestway alternatives that Bryce just covered. These projects include parks projects, utility projects, and some of our transportation projects. And I'll just pause for a second so you can see that list and those costs. And then next, I just want to walk you through the next steps for the shared use path process after this evening. First, we'll take input received from tonight and continue refining the alternatives. Then we'll return to council later this year with responses to questions and additional information requested. And then we'll ask the city council to identify one or more preferred alternatives to present to the community for feedback. And then we'll seek feedback from the community. We'll compile that information, present it to the city council for a decision on a preferred path alternative. Once the city council makes a decision on the preferred path alternative, then we'll propose that project in the update of the 6-year TIP next year in June. And then here are just a couple of discussion topics that we thought might be helpful in guiding the city council through the discussion on the shared use path alternatives, and that would also help staff to move forward. So that concludes our presentation. We'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you. Council, I propose maybe we could take those one at a time, just so we can get through this in an organized fashion. Does that sound right, Deborah? Councilmember Reynolds.
I actually have a number of questions, but I'll just do one now.
Go for it.
The chart that you put up and that was in the packet that compared the various options in multiple ways was very helpful. But there was one notable column missing for that chart, which is you didn't note, at least that I saw, the relative safety improvements of the various options. And I wonder if you can just comment on, is one notably better or worse than the other for both, in particular for bicycle and pedestrian safety?
Yeah. Thank you for your comments and question, Councilmember Reynolds. As far as a metric of safety improvements, I think it's hard to determine at this time, but the objective of separating users from the vehicle traffic is the primary safety benefit. You could research studies, I don't have them memorized, but the more you separate the users of pedestrians and bikes from vehicles and from each other, general safety of the corridor does improve. So that's something we can certainly look into and utilize our consultant DKS associates who helped with the safety study, kind of dial in those metrics between the three.
Now, it'd be helpful to me to have more info, because as I consider the alternatives, it strikes me that the shared use path where you mix bicycles and pedestrians probably makes things a little bit more dangerous for pedestrians than would an option where the bicycles are in the roadway. But putting the bicycles in the roadway, or a part of the roadway, probably makes it a little bit more dangerous for them as opposed to the shared use path. And I just don't know if there's any data that will allow us to know how to balance that. So anything you can do would be helpful.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Councilman Andorra. Sorry. Councilman Andorra, I'll get you.
Of course I'm on mute. It has to happen once a meeting. Thanks so much for that presentation. The visuals were really helpful and the explanation was really helpful. I have to say I have a lot of questions, but one that kind of springs to mind is what kind of data do we have regarding pedestrian vehicle accidents or bicycle vehicle accidents in this corridor, and for how far back? And can we get that?
So a lot of that data was part of the safety study analysis. And I believe that's in the final report of the safety study. And I don't have those numbers memorized. Certainly as an alternative were to go to final design, new metrics would be accounted for or could be accounted for to update those numbers based on the previous 5 years. I don't remember which dates were performed as part of the original safety study.
But the safety studies with staff, not with us, right?
Councilmember Andrew, I'll jump in here. We did a prior presentation to the council, gosh, I think Patrick was that a year or so ago, or Jason? 2 years.
2022
Yeah.
on the safety study.
Yeah. So let us do this. That's not fresh in any of our minds, and probably not yours as well, in fairness.
Nope.
We'll make sure we get that back out to you. And when we come back to you later this year, the date for that follow-up presentation is not scheduled yet. We'll make sure we link back to that report as well. And we can also drop into our slide deck the information on that safety study that relates to this part of the corridor. Thank you for the question.
Yeah, sure. I have another question, and I don't know if anybody else is going to go, but
Well, I'll come back to you. Councilmember Jacobson.
Yes, my question is, with regard to any of the alternatives presented on page 5 of our agenda packet, would any additional property be required to implement those alternatives? And if so, what would be the cost of doing that?
The preliminary layouts presented tonight are all laid out within existing public right-of-way along Island Crestway. The right-of-way varies between 60 and 80 feet, and the existing travel lanes there's only 2 existing travel lanes, so that presents a big opportunity outside of the travel vehicle lanes to construct these improvements without impacting private residences. So right now, there would be no cost to property acquisition to construct these improvements. As final design were to move forward with a preferred alternative, that will certainly be part of that evaluation. Does that answer your question, Councilmember?
Sort of, thank you.
Councilmember Weicker.
So thank you for that presentation, and I love the graphics that you presented to make it really easy to imagine how this would look. So I have a couple questions too, but I'll just start with that initial public comment we had about the width of the lanes. I don't know, Patrick, if you heard that when we had that comment. If you want to speak to that or have our consultant speak to that, I just want to understand what that comment was all about and make sure we're all clear about what this project means in regard to that comment.
I think the citizen that was making the comment was speaking to lane widths and how sometimes lane widths, if they are wider, can cause vehicles to travel faster. At this point in our analysis and pre-design work, we're just at a concept level. If the bike lane alternative becomes the preferred alternative, we would proceed with a more detailed design, and in that process, we'd look at lane widths and everything else related to lane widths, traffic calming, and such.
And my
So
understanding
what you
is-
see today is just the concept.
Okay. And my understanding is those flashing lights in intersection crosswalks help mitigate speed of traffic going forward, right? That's another design element.
Flashing lights at the crosswalks are intended to alert drivers that there's a pedestrian that wants to cross or is crossing.
Thank you.
Councilman Weinberg.
Yeah, so along the lines of what you're just saying, they're at the concept stage right now, and there will be opportunities for more detailed design questions later. There's a suggestion that we received about the placement of the sidewalk or the crosswalk, excuse me, at 63rd, of maybe being on the south side of the intersection rather than the north side. Am I assuming correctly that that would be something to raise during the design stage later on, not at concept stage?
Primarily what we're talking about tonight are the alternatives for the shared use path. What Bryce shared earlier this evening as an overview is that there are different components or tasks related to the overall project: lighting study, the tree study for the corridor, crosswalk improvements, and then intersection feasibility studies. The crosswalk improvements, the design for that is complete, and it's ready to go out to bid for construction this summer. The reason that we're doing that work ahead of everything else is that this is a kind of an easy way to improve pedestrian and bicycle safety, especially near the school.
Okay, well, maybe I could ask, was the option of moving the crosswalk at that intersection to the south side considered, and was there a reason that we chose to keep it on the north side?
It was considered. We did look at a couple of things, and Bryce may want to elaborate as well, but there's an existing bus stop on the south leg of that intersection. And the existing crosswalk is on the north side of the intersection. Drivers and pedestrians are used to that crosswalk in that location. And so oftentimes it's easier or better to place a new crosswalk in the existing location, especially if we're providing enhancements, because users and drivers are used to that location. And then again, the other consideration is the location of the bus stop. There's a bus stop pullout on that that south leg, which provides and creates challenges for locating the crosswalk on that south leg instead of the north leg.
Yeah, everything you said, Patrick, is accurate as part of our assessment.
Great, thanks. I'm going to take a turn, then we'll go for a second round here. Bryce, in any of the survey work that you did, some of these things are hard to know. It's like, before you build it, if someone's going to use it, if you build it, they will come. But do you have any estimates of how many folks would utilize, not the shared use piece of it, but a bike, how many people would bike that aren't biking right now? Was there any survey work you did around that?
We have not engaged the public with these alternatives yet, and that's part of tonight's discussion to put these in front of you. It is hard to predict, as you've stated, and it is if you build it, they will come. I will note with the bike lane consideration, that alternative, a dedicated bike lane within this project limit may be useful, but connecting it to the north and to the south into the existing bike network that's on the Getting Around page that the city's developed, there are limited marked bicycle facilities. So I think if we were to go down the road of marking out separated bike lanes for this section of Island Crest Way, I think folks would use it locally, but island-wide, it may not be the most desirable alternative through through final design and through these continued discussions with staff and council and through public outreach.
Great. Thanks. Councilmember Reynolds.
Question 2, as I look at this, I'm contemplating bike facilities I've seen in other places, and I commute by bike to downtown Seattle, and a number of the bike lanes in downtown are structured as two-way lanes on one side of the road. And I know you've got one on each side, which means you've got an extra barrier you have to build versus the alternative where they're both on one side. That seems to create some more flexibility to use the space more efficiently. Did you consider that option here? And if not, why not?
Yeah, that's a great consideration, Councilmember Reynolds. We did preliminarily look at that, a cycle track. To be honest, I can't remember the details of which side we had that placed on at this time because we were developing these three alternatives. But again, for this segment of Island Crest Way, that cycle track, that two-way bike facility, connection at the north end of this project limit to the existing bike route or the widened shoulders on Island Crest Way through the 3-lane section, as you proceed north, bicycle users would have to navigate how to eventually separate. So I think for this project segment, it may be a useful tool, but thinking about the long-term connections and where users are going to go and end up is also a major consideration for an alternative like that. I'm not saying it's off the table, but that's kind of where our thought process was when we developed the separated bike lane alternative and keeping the bike lanes on both sides of the road.
I acknowledge the connection problem and the transition is one to be resolved, but it does seem like if we think about the road alternative, that would be a way to, by taking away the need for one of the barriers, maybe we can make the other barrier a little wider and more protective, so.
Thank you.
Councilmember Anderall.
Thanks. I still also have a bunch of questions, but my first one, I guess, is why are the impacts regarding impervious surfaces so different comparing the east and the west? I mean, one's 15,000 and one's 24,000. And it seems to me it's just which side of the road do you choose to put the path on? And so if you could explain that, that would be great.
Absolutely. So the east side shared use path, which is 10 to 12 feet wide, depending on utility conflicts, replaces an existing impervious surface walkway, which is between 5 and 6 feet. So the new impervious surface metric presented is the difference between the existing paved walkway and the new widened shared use path for the east side. On the west side alternative, there is no paved walkway for the majority of that project segment. So all of that shared use path is considered new impervious surface. Thank you.
Councilman Reynolds.
Yeah, thinking again to other bike facilities I've seen, if I take a look at European cities like Copenhagen, for example, they use other methods to separate the bikes from the cars, including curbs and different elevations and things like that. Is that considered appropriate or safe in this country? Is there reasons those wouldn't be considered?
If the separated bike lane facility were to be the desired alternative to move forward, the separation treatments, as you described, need to be considered for final design and safety of all users. So what we presented tonight is the minimum requirements of the stripe buffer with the flexible delineators. There are several enhancements on top of that, such can be seen in downtown Seattle, Bellevue, and other places across the country and international. So again, if that one were to move forward, certainly evaluating that buffer is part of that final design effort.
Councilmember Anderall.
Thanks. Bryce, did you, and maybe I missed it in the report, did you evaluate regarding the east corridor or the east side path and the west side path, how many public and private entry points there are on each side into Island Crestway? Are they about the same?
Yes, great question. We did evaluate that, and the west side has several private entry points with driveways and other access points. The east side has, I have the numbers, I'd have to dig through a project file to find them. I wrote them down. But the east side does cross the public right-of-way substantially more than the west side, where vehicle use would be more frequent along the east side. And
For Bryce, Patrick, and Jason, I think as you're aware, this question was coming up this afternoon in particular. So Councilmember Anderl, for our next presentation and follow-up, We'll provide a graphic so that we can show the driveways on both sides and,
Yep.
and the detailed information.
Great,
Councilmember
thanks.
Councilmember Jacobson.
Do we have current traffic counts for pedestrians and bikes and automobiles or vehicles that use the roadway for this portion of the corridor for Monday through Friday?
Sure. We have the data that was collected as part of the 2022 safety study. As part of our project scope, we have not collected any new data.
Okay.
I'll just add that if an alternative is moving forward, collecting new data would be something that we would do as part of the next iteration and further project development. But the conceptual designs were based off the 2022 data, as Bryce mentioned.
Okay.
Councilmember Weicker.
So I'm just going to say I like the west side path best if you're looking for initial feedback. I like that it's low impact to utilities. It's not so hard to move all that. I like the fact that all the parks and playgrounds in Island Park are on the west side. I think that's a safe route to school too. And I think my only question then is, I think for Jason, is we're thinking about this corridor in relation to everything else going north. I think about kids kind of cutting up at Island Park and going up sort of through the neighborhood to get to the high school and maybe that other elementary school and the other playgrounds up there. So that crossing the street of Island Park, or Island Crest Way, kind of there to get from west to east for the other kind of public schools over there and public playgrounds. That's part of the whole bike ped planning process, right? Can you just speak to that? Kind of how this fits with the rest of the north-south corridor that we've been talking about for years?
Patrick, and Bryce can chime in as well, but I think to your point, whatever alternative is identified, the connection points is, and as Councilman Reynolds alluded to earlier too, that they're critical, they're important, they're a big component to this, and that'll be part of the next phase of this work, right? So if an alternative is going to move forward and we start looking at things, we start shrinking down from a concept, we start pinpointing what the actual design starts to look like, right? And our team builds the design with Bryce and his team, and that's those connection points to and from on the north and the south end are key contributors to it and will be part of that process. So to your point, yeah, the connection points are very, very important. That's something we will look at as this project would move forward, if it moves forward.
And I think the first part of your question was about how do we get people from the west side, if the path is on the west side, to the east side and then heading north beyond the school. The Crosswalk Improvement Project is going to be installing a pedestrian signal at the school there. And so that'll make it much easier for people to cross right there or right across the crosswalk.
Councilmember Reynolds.
Yeah, for what it's worth, although my opinions have been shifting as the weekend went on, but the west side alternative does seem like the most attractive option to me as well right now, although I don't think we should rule out the others. But I just wonder, on the west side option, I'd still get nervous about bikes and pedestrians combined together. And is it possible to further delineate that shared use path to have a section for bikes and a section for pedestrians that are perhaps separated in some way? Is that an option so we can separate those two categories as well? Or is there not enough room to do that?
We can certainly evaluate an alternative as you described. I think the west side does provide the most flexibility for two separated facilities. And I'm just thinking of projects I've seen in downtown Seattle. I know along the new waterfront connection from kind of Belltown down to the waterfront, they have a bike lane and a sidewalk at the same grade, separated by detectable warning strip. And the bike lane is asphalt and the sidewalk is concrete. If the shared use path were to move forward as the preferred alternative, I think a treatment like that could certainly be evaluated and considered for the final, ped bike facility for this segment.
Yeah, I don't know all the pros and cons, but that's
Right.
seems like a tempting alternative to consider.
And the west side has a little more space for flexible design elements.
Thank you.
And one potential impact, if we're separating out users on a shared use path, it would likely result in a wider path to make room for those separations.
Mhm.
You know, if you think about separating out the bikes, look at the bike lane alternative. That's 5-foot bike lanes in both directions, so that's 10 feet.
Yep.
But certainly something we could look into.
If we were to consider that in conjunction with the option to increase or decrease the lane width, which appears to be an option at least on the table, it might be an option that could be considered.
Councilmember Andrew.
Okay, so just so far, just two more questions left. But Bryce, you said earlier that there was no private property impact in any of the three scenarios, and you went through the slides pretty quickly. I don't have them open. I don't have the whole 44-page summary open, but it seems to me that all of them show at least some private tree removal, or 2 out of the 3 show private tree removal. So is there impact to private property or not?
If the park facilities are considered private property, then there could be some park facility tree removal. It's not within the public right of way.
I thought that there was at least one
Yeah.
indication of not park tree, not right-of-way tree, but private tree.
And I think one of those is along the west side, if I'm remembering the graphics correctly. There may be 1 or 2 private trees being removed that are on the property line, and it's likely to increase visibility at a crossing or increase visibility along the pathway.
Councilman Randall, we can certainly go back and look at a tree by tree case and determine which ones are in the right of way, which ones are on private property. There's, as Bryce is mentioning, it's just a few of them, but we don't have that at our fingertips right now, but we can certainly follow up with how many trees are specific to right of way versus private property.
Great. And it's kind of weird because I realize we're at a high level conceptual design, but some of the data is very, very specific. So it's,
I will just say it's specific to these conceptual alternatives. As one were to move forward, those would get even more specific and more refined, the numbers presented tonight.
Oh, okay, thanks.
And Councilmember Andrew, I will just, it's worth mentioning, as we started this conceptual work, we told our consultants, study the trees. That is one of the first things we need to understand is the impact to the canopy. So that's why we have that level of specificity at this stage. But some of the other items aren't, fully developed yet.
Okay, thanks.
Councilmember Andrew, if you want to continue.
My last question, and this is, I don't expect an answer to this, and BO, I apologize, this is a pop quiz for the city attorney late at night into the meeting, but if we were to spend all this money and build this corridor, could the city legally legislate bikes off of Island Crest Way? And say, you have this facility now, you're required to ride there, you are not permitted to ride on the street with traffic. Oh, you're on mute.
Sorry. I think you can, and Patrick, if you have any familiarity with this issue, feel free to chime in. But my off-the-cuff answer from your lightning question here is that yes, it's likely possible, and I'll confirm that for you and the rest of the council.
Not going to hold you to this answer tonight. I didn't expect you to even be willing to wade into that end of the pool, but appreciate your off-the-cuff answer. And I do think it's important to know. I'm not saying we would do it, but if it's not going to really solve the bicycle automobile interaction issue, then what would be the point?
Understood.
Councilmember Weinberg.
I just wanted to wrap up by saying this is a great plan and great progress. And I think when this is all done, we're going to have a wonderful solution that's going to be a big improvement to the community. So great work, everybody.
Anybody else?
Yeah, well.
Councilmember Henderall.
What we haven't really talked about is, and maybe it's too early, is, where does the funding for this come from? And, is this really a priority now that we don't have a city hall and we have a failing public works building? And, I mean, how much, I know that Bryce indicated that there may be state money from various sources. And, maybe it would be good to, put a pause on this until we had money from another source that wasn't the city coffers, because right now, I would not feel good about telling the citizens that we're going to cut down hundreds of trees, spend $12 million. And also, by the way, ask them to buy us a new maintenance building and a new city hall. I mean, I just cannot hold all those thoughts in my head at the same time. And I kind of thought that this meeting was supposed to have that kind of a policy discussion, after we get the answers to our specific questions, which we now have. So if it's appropriate, city manager, I'd like to kind of hear people's thoughts on all of those things. And if this is not the time or place for that, you just tell me.
Great question, and probably a good segue. Council, this planning phase for our bike and pedestrian north-south connections was added to our work plan before we knew we were going to lose City Hall. And so we are quite a ways into the planning process. If the council would like to pause at this point, I would be looking for your direction to do so. Not necessarily tonight. I do think it's worth. We've tracked your questions this meeting, so I would at least like to say, let us come back and respond to your questions and have another discussion. But it's your prerogative if the planning continues or not. I will also say, and I had a chance to talk to a couple of you who called today, a project like this, you may decide to complete the plan and then pause the project until a future date when we have funding. And I certainly, it's not lost on me, the magnitude of our capital program right now, including beginning to design a new public safety and maintenance building. So I would say let's bring that back for the, you all can think about what comes next. We'll be prepared to at least talk about maybe more in detail the funding options, particularly where we might outside sources of funding for a project like this. So we'll come back. Council, the other thing I wanted to mention is I've had the benefit of seeing a version of this presentation probably 4 times ahead of tonight's meeting as we were working on it. This is a big, long corridor, and it's really challenging for Bryce and Patrick to get everything onto a slide deck. We have contemplated later this spring offering to do kind of a corridor drive with any council members that are interested. And if that's something you'd like to do with us, I will work on scheduling those. We would probably, so that the sequence of events here would be probably in April or May. We would visit the corridor on a field trip with you in small groups. And then we would set our return presentation for either sometime later this spring, summer, or fall. I need to talk to the staff on the timing of that. So just some options you have to consider, and if tonight's not the night to make that call, we can talk more later.
Councilmember Weicker.
Yeah, so Lisa, I hear you on the budget and all the competing issues, and I don't know if Matt's on the line, but don't we have designated funding for transportation funding and roads and safe routes to school and all that? So I'd like to see the analysis on the financial part. That makes sense, but I'm not in favor of stopping this work or even pausing it. I think we need a plan to go after that funding, and I think this is something we've been asked to do for at least the decade that I've been paying attention to that corridor, and the improvements that we need there are long overdue. So I think we need a plan to be able to get some funding down the road. We're not talking about doing this immediately. We're talking about trying to figure out how to make this work with all the other projects we have to keep going regardless of the city hall when the public safety building. So, yes, we have a lot to do. Yes, it's going to cost a lot. And we have to prioritize, but I don't think we need to spend $12 million. I don't think we need the 2 lanes on either side. I think the west side is doable, and certainly if we plan for it over time and implement it as we can, once we get more details about what it's actually going to look like and what it's actually going to cost with Bryce's help. So I think we need to keep going and weigh it as we always do during the budget season.
Councilor Jacobson.
Among the things that was requested was feedback on alternatives, and so I'll give you mine. I'm inclined, and strongly inclined, to favor a west side solution. And that conclusion is based on commuting in that corridor for 24 years, 6 to 7 times a week. And putting things on the east side will exacerbate a problem which already exists, and that is there are a number of people vehicles who access Island Crest Way from the east side, particularly at morning commute. And of course, the afternoon commute's a little more distributed, the people that are turning eastbound. However, that's a significant, for every impediment we put between the stop sign on, say, Southeast 59th and the roadway, increases the traffic problem and the safety considerations, because a car has to presently sort of sneak out and get its nose out to see what's coming, either north, well, particularly what's coming north in the morning. So that's a consideration. I would also suspect that if Island Crest School were to be closed, and, stick pins in the jig doll for even bringing that subject up, and I'm not suggesting it, the usage of this facility would significantly decrease. And I say that not to say stop doing everything. I think we should continue with planning, but the expenditure of large amounts of money, particularly for the shared bike lanes, is not something I'm in favor of. And when I have seen those lanes which are mixed with traffic, it makes me, as a car driver, much more nervous, because I don't know what the bicyclist is going to do. And I have to drive with that in mind, because I'm responsible not only for my own safety, but for anybody who intrudes or is close to the roadway. So I think that's another factor in my conclusion that the west side would be a better and safer way of operating here.
Councilman Reynolds.
Yeah, as I mentioned earlier, I think the west side is most attractive to me as well. And a couple of comments to make. One, as somebody who drives and bikes, Councilmember Jacobson, I relate to your comment about, as a driver, being nervous because you don't know what the biker is going to do. I'll point out that as a biker, it's even worse because you don't know what the driver is going to do. And the consequences for the biker in that situation are much more serious. But either way, we get to the same conclusion that separation is good. I think, this is expensive, there's no doubt about it, but, safety costs money. And this is potentially a notable improvement in safety. And I hope whatever plan we've come through to, that we do a rigorous evaluation of the safety of the various options. There've been a couple of comments made tonight about level of traffic and level of accidents in this range. But I think to a certain extent, if the level of traffic or accidents are low, it's because people are afraid to go there. And if we create a safer commuting route or transit route for bikers, we're going to see a lot more of them. We'll see a lot more kids walking to school and biking to school. I think those are tremendous things. They're consistent with our safe routes to school goals. They're consistent with our goals under the Climate Action Plan to get people out of their cars. I think this is a tremendous next step to take. It's been something was on the last pedestrian and bicycle facilities plan and on the plan before that. So it's been something we've been talking about for a couple of decades, and I'm glad to see progress finally happening. That said, let's take the time, let's engage with the community, make sure they understand the implications of the various options, what we hope to get out of this, and get feedback from the community on what they think the best options are. I think it's imperative that we have a robust community engagement process on this to get some buy-in on what will admittedly be a disruptive project that brings a lot of change, and change is scary sometimes.
Councilman Riker.
And I'll just add one data point that might be useful is the adoption of e-bikes, because I've noticed more and more people using those instead of cars, even electric cars, to get around and get to Seattle and get to the east side. So that's another justification, I think, for connecting south to north and back on a commuting day.
Councilmember Anderall.
Yeah, I just wanted to kind of round out the concerns that I raised in terms of, budget and other things. I don't know if I did mention the serious concern that I had with the amount of trees that would be, the number of trees that would be removed. I know it says in the plan they'll all be replanted, but we all know that you can't replace, 50 and 100-year-old trees by planting 2-year-old trees. It's not the same. It's not the same canopy coverage. It's not the same feel when you drive down the road. I don't know if there is a way to look at any of these options that minimizes the tree removal, if there's a way to go with a narrower path that is still safe. But there's a lot about this that just makes me want to hit the pause button, particularly given the 8,000 to 10,000 trips per day on automobiles and the very, very minimal number of bike trips that will be benefited by this. It's just, you have to do a cost-benefit analysis on it. And between the environmental impacts, the money, the transportation impacts for vehicular traffic, and the other city priorities, I'm just very hesitant to move forward at all at this time. But I understand if the majority of the council wants to move forward with planning, and I respect, Jesse, your comments that you've got a lot of questions tonight from us, and it's fair to at least come back with those answers. So, yeah, I'm not gonna gripe about that, but I really wanted my concerns on the record.
City Manager Vaughn.
Yeah, thank you, Deputy Mayor. I wanted to follow up on Councilmember Reynolds. You were referencing the community engagement process, and Council, we've stood up a Let's Talk page. Actually, it's been live for quite a while. There's an update posted tonight with the materials from your packet. I will ask the staff to make sure the PowerPoint presentation from tonight is also loaded onto that page. So for right now, that is the best place to go and get information. We are anticipating our next step would be to come to you, and we haven't set that follow-up meeting date. We would benefit from the council potentially narrowing the list. For example, if the east side path is just off the table for the council, then there's no point in going to the community. So I'd ask you to think about, between now and our next meeting, what direction you as a council would like to provide us to help us prepare for that public engagement process. We kind of inverted the process here. Rather than just going to the community, we're stopping to talk to you again and say, here's our findings. You didn't have any information until tonight, nor did the community, about things like tree removal and cost. So when we come back, if that's direction you'd like to provide to narrow the list of options, that's great. If not, and you'd like us to share all of the alternatives with the community, that's an alternative too. I'm not asking you to make that decision tonight. I think we should make it at the next meeting, but I wanted to tell you that will be feedback I'll be looking for.
Well, now we all have homework as well. One question that I want to ask, if we can get some more information for the next time, if we were to go with the west side option, once you get to 90th, getting people to move, if you're going north, you'd have to move to the east side of the street. What that would look like, and if there are safety concerns there, would be a question I would have, because I live closer to the north end of that, and I would be concerned in some of the places to ride my bike there. And I'm curious how much, if we do this, how much you're actually buying for safety as it comes to someone looking to go all the way north-south. Councilmember Reynolds, is that an old hand or a new hand, or a newish hand?
Newish. I just realized one point I forgot to make, which is, as I've talked to the community over the last couple of years, one thing that comes up much more often recently is the terror and the concern that drivers have about electric scooters. It's a new thing, and they're in the road, and they're small, they're hard to see, they're moving fast, they're scary for drivers. And my consistent answer to that is, if you're scared by these things, I doubt we're going to stop them, and we probably shouldn't try. But the best way to make it safer for everybody is to provide somewhere for those scooters to go that is off the roads. And this seems like an important first step in that, so I'd love to see this happen. Fully supportive of continuing to press this forward. I'm glad we'll get another, it sounds like we'll be talking about this again at the next meeting, is that correct, or?
We haven't, no.
No? Okay, not that soon?
A future meeting, I think.
A future meeting,
Yeah,
okay.
I need to, we wanted to take the feedback from tonight. I'll regroup with the staff, and then we'll talk about when we can come back. Deputy Mayor, I wanted to capture too, and I think this picked up several comments. It seems like there's interest in really looking at how these options will connect to everything else. And the movements you would have, you know, if we're on the west side, what does that mean for crosswalks? So we'll talk to the staff about how we can present that in more detail and hopefully get those questions answered conceptually at the next meeting.
Councilmember Anderall.
Thanks. Yeah, I thought I was done, but now I'm not. So for the next meeting, can somebody talk to me about, like, say if we choose the west side option, I'm just thinking this through as a walker or a biker or a car driver. Now, if I'm entering Island Crest Way now from the west, heading, you know, pointing east, going to turn north or south, I really only have to look at traffic on Island Crest Way, whether that be, well, maybe there's a sidewalk there, but, you know, whether that be a bike or an electric scooter or a car coming, and if I want to turn right, I only have to look in one direction. If there is a shared use path where there will be traffic going both ways at varying speeds from pedestrian to e-bike, are there going to be 2 stop signs? Does the car have to stop at the trail and then make sure it's safe to cross? And then is there some space for it to stop again before it enters Island Crest Way? I guess I'm really kind of confused about how that works. And nobody has to answer that tonight, but I'd certainly be interested to hear how that works, or if there are stop signs for the trail users at various points. It just seems like the trail, which separates people from the cars, may be safer in that way, but it may create other hazards. And I mean, I realize this is a very popular solution, so it must have been dealt with in some way, but it kind of, like I said, it kind of, to me, makes a triple whammy, because now you're looking at the trail, you're looking at traffic from both directions, you're looking at entering Island Crest Way, and you're looking at traffic from both directions. And so if somebody can illuminate that for me at the next meeting, I would be very grateful.
So, and I want to make sure I totally understood. You're talking about, like, particularly at intersections, now you've got an additional amenity and another crossing that you're dealing with, both cars and bikes and peds. So we do have a lot of information on how that's designed. I'm sure all the public works staff are clenching their jaws. I'm answering this question. So we could share, I think there were a lot of design questions posed tonight. I will observe. We can come back and share just some samples of different treatments to illustrate how that gets designed and works together. But there are some samples from our region, regional trails. Maybe we could also share out some of those locations if you'd like to go take a walk or a bike ride and see it in action for yourself.
Councilmember Jacobson.
One thing that I hope hasn't gotten lost in this whole thing is I heard our city engineer say that there's plans to go forward with beefing up, for want of a better term, the crosswalks, adding those flashing light devices, and I assume putting that high-vis stuff on signposts indicating crosswalks are coming and this kind of thing. And I'm all for proceeding with that with absolute dispatch. And my own experience living close to 40th, that has become quite a bit safer place just with the high-vis signs, because you can really see them. And I know the city of Kirkland's had very good experience with those, with the flashing light kinds of things. And I think we'd want to, at least I would want to do that. I haven't talked to my colleagues about this, but I think we'd all want to do that sooner rather than later and just get on with it. Because no matter what we do, whether we any one of these alternatives or do nothing or whatever, we still need to make that safety improvement. So I feel very strongly about that.
So I have a suggestion. First of all, congratulations, council. You've already made some of those decisions and those projects are moving forward. But if you're like me, it's virtually impossible to keep track of all the projects we have going right now because there are so many. So very soon, your Public Works team will be back in front of you with the next iteration of the Transportation Improvement Plan. I think what I'll ask them to do, and they're gonna remember this, is just plug in what's on deck right now, a couple of slides, so we can remind you about those improvements that are going out to bid right now. So that's, we'll make sure we get that back in front of you and we refresh on that work.
Great. Councilmember Weicker.
I was just going to say, if you put this in the context of everything else we've been doing and all the bike safety improvements in East Mercer Way and West Mercer Way, widening of the shoulder there, not the bike path there, you can see that this is the missing link we've been talking about for a long time. Everyone talks about the north-south missing link, and I know Patrick's an expert in this, so he doesn't want to talk about it tonight, but I think that's key in reminding everything we've been doing for years and where this is going and the funding that we'll get there. But this piece of it is sort of the key part for the funnel for the kids coming here and there, and then the commuters kind of getting onto the fastest way to get to I-90 to get to east or west where they work off island. So this missing link is critical for a lot of different people using this. And again, as those e-bikes come on and gas is getting more expensive and traffic is getting worse, this is just, I think this is such a critical project to keep moving forward, and certainly putting it in the context of all the other work we have to do and all the other money we have to spend. But we can't stop now. So west side, west side, west side.
All right. Well, everybody has some homework. Thank you to everyone, all the staff members who have put a ton of time into this. Appreciate the insight and expertise. We now move to other business and the planning schedule, and for that, we welcome City Manager Bond.
Yes, council, just another quick reminder, Thursday, 5 o'clock, joint meeting with the school district. It's at their building. And I know several of us will not make that meeting because we will be in this room for a joint meeting with the Parks Commission and the Open Space Trust. And I do think it's okay to be splitting our attendance at that meeting. Let's see. One thing I wanted to call out, we had some questions tonight about finances. So I'll just remind you that in the April-May timeframe, that is when we come to you and we give you a report out on the year end, so the 2023 year end. And that's also when we give you your first quarter 2024 report out. And then we roll right into a TIP discussion. So that's all coming. We're just a little over a month away from that. And more to come. That's all I have this evening, Mr. Deputy Mayor.
Excellent. Any council member absences to report? All right, well, perfect attendance. Council member reports. I will go first. I don't have anything significant to report. Councilmember Weicker. Nothing. Councilmember Weinberg.
Nothing to report.
Councilmember Reynolds.
I just want to mention something that I think City Manager Bond mentioned in an email, but I want to share it in case people missed that or for the benefit of the community. The Parks Commission met recently, and they've been working full speed ahead on the Parks Zone and made a fairly important decision last week, which is to subdivide that work into 2 phases. The first phase of which will be to work on the open space portions of our park systems with the goal of completing that for this round of the comprehensive plan update. And the second phase to deal with the rest of the parks, since they viewed the issue for the parks to be fundamentally different from the issues of the open spaces, and that the rest of the parks work will probably extend into 2025 and would have to involve a comprehensive plan amendment after the main comp plan process is completed. City Manager, did I describe that correctly as far as you know? Yes. So they're meeting next on Thursday, as noted. I'm still trying to decide which of the 2 meetings I should go to, but probably be at some of both.
Excellent. Councilmember Anderall.
No, I will be at the joint meeting with Parks and Rec Commission and the Open Space Conservancy Trust on Thursday, and there's also a Salmon Recovery Council meeting on Thursday, so I'll report out on those at our next council meeting.
Great, thank you. Councilmember Jacobson.
2 things to report. The Utility Board's most recent meeting involved a presentation on our stormwater system and the things that are on the to-do list and things that we have to work on, and introduced a new member of that stormwater team who made an impressive performance. The other thing is the monthly meeting of the East Side Transportation Consortium or Partnership. There's several different ones that do their, met 2 Fridays ago, and the charge to the members was to say, what's your transportation priorities? And interestingly enough, they were almost unanimous. And item number 1, which was a runaway leader, was public safety when the sound transit system is finally in effect, and concerns about what the implications for that are in terms of city public safety forces and that sort of thing. So item number 2 was a concern about last mile, and it's related to concern number 3, which was parking, because in one way of looking at it is that if people are taking sound transit, instead of driving into Seattle or driving north or south, going to the airport, how do you get there? And the thinking by many cities is that's going to be people in cars that need to park, and that means parking facilities and other kinds of things, and the money for which isn't just apparently hanging on trees. So those are the 3 things, and I believe all cities weighed in to pretty much in that order, not necessarily in terms of emphasis, but that's what was done. Now, this is really an advisory group, and it's more about talking about problems than having any authority to deal with them, but interesting to hear that others have some of our concerns.
Great, thank you. The next hybrid meeting of the City Council is a joint meeting with the Mercer Island School Board of Directors scheduled this Thursday, March 21st, 2024 at 5 p.m. The following hybrid meeting of the City Council is scheduled for Tuesday, April 2nd, 2024 at 5 p.m. The time is now 8:36 p.m. As a reminder to the council, please stay seated until the city staff has terminated the broadcast. Good evening, and thank you for joining us.